Hello, good morning. So first, I would like to thank the organizers and the sponsors for organizing this wonderful event. Second, what I want from this presentation is that you have a better sense of what the Nodle Network is. It's a very complex project, very strange, very different. So that's my goal. A few words about me. I've worked 20 years in the mobile industry. So basically, I was doing mobile apps on black and white screens way before the iPhone. So J2ME, Symbian, those were horrible platforms to develop, and things have improved a lot since then. And recently, I work in a marketplace, right, car sharing service. And a marketplace has very many similarities with things that we are doing at Nodle. So marketplace, you have a supply side, you have a demand side, and those interact, and the blockchain is the key. So let me first ask you a question. Have you ever tamed an eagle? Any one of you? I haven't tried myself, but some people can do it, and some people are expert at it. However, what about a swarm? How complicated would that be? It would be crazy, but this is not our mission. We are trying to tame a swarm. More precisely, it's about taming a swarm of smartphones. So a bit of history. This concept, this project was funded by Misha Benoliel. He's been in the decentralized environment even before crypto was a thing. He launched an app called FireChat, which was used 10 years ago in Hong Kong. It was allowing people to basically connect with each other through Bluetooth, even when the mobile network was down. So this idea of decentralization was very prominent in his mind. And he was obsessed, and the team is obsessed about how could we create an infrastructure with smartphones to create public good. So the Nodle Network is an incarnation of this obsession. And while taming the swarm, we get two outcomes. We develop a new kind of computer, and we accelerate crypto adoption. So what do I mean by kind of computer? Well, I mean a computing platform. Don't really mean a computer. A computing platform, it could be an OS, it can be hardware, it can be a web browser, it can be a smartphone, it can be a set of APIs. And actually, the three major computing platforms of the past 20 years have been obviously the smartphones. It's revolutionized in usage and adoption. It's the most commonly used computing platform in the world. The web, obviously, it revolutionized many things like service delivery. You don't have to deliver your new app all the time. It gets updated. You just have to refresh the page. And of course, the cloud. It's more a revolution in terms of enablement. And today, there is an explosion of new computing platforms. I hate this representation of blockchain, but it's kind of ridiculous. But like the Bitcoin coin is also ridiculous, right? So anyway, blockchain is a trustless computer. That's what Chris Dixon says. It's a computer that can make commitment. So it's a new kind of computer in a way. But you also have AR, VR, IoT, which edge computing, smart home, robotics, and of course also wearables. Traditionally, when you have a new computing platform, it doesn't erase the previous one. It's never the case, actually. Computing platforms basically build on each other, and today, most of the services that you use actually use a combination of 3 or 4. Like Instagram, of course, it's a cloud service that uses the smartphone is the main consumer, and of course, you can consume it on the web as well. So the smartphone has unique properties. It's not just a small computer, obviously. It's not a computer making phone calls. It does way more things. It's really portable. It has hyper-connectivity. So, of course, you have all the connectivity you want in terms of wireless. more importantly, it's always with a person. Your computer might sit there, and you might do something else, but I mean, I don't bring my computer in the restroom, but I do with the smartphone. It's also sensor-enabled. You have, right now, you see that there is a discussion about the webcam of the new MacBook and so on. Webcam became really popular. The central-facing cam became hugely popular with smartphone, actually. But you also have many different MEMS, so you are able to, not only the GPS, but of course the accelerometer. So it's a different kind of computer. It has unique properties. The cloud is not just unique, it's emerging characteristics. What do we mean by emerging? Is when you put things together and the sum is bigger than the sum of the parts. So it's elastic, it's more reliable, obviously it's always on, but it's also virtual, and it has some drawbacks. You're not sovereign on the cloud. So every computing platform has some good stuff, but of course some other things which are not ideal. Now, what would we get if we were building this kind of new computer? A swarm of swarm phones. We call it the swarmphone. It's kind of new computing platform. In terms of, you have to imagine if you sum up all the smartphones in the world, it is actually more powerful than all the clouds. It's hyperconnectivity. You have hyperconnectivity. You have a myriad of sensors. You have a myriad of users. But there are some drawbacks as well. That's why it's difficult to tame. You rent it, and you have totally unpredictable behaviors. But we wanted to do it anyway, so the Nodle Network is the incarnation of this experiment. What are the challenges to build a swarm phone? Fragmentation is a huge problem. Of course, you are renting from millions of users. They don't know each other. You don't know them. They have different operating systems. They have different versions. You, of course, have the privacy. If you really want to do it well, you want to make sure that you might want to use the capabilities of the smartphone without knowing anything about the user. And third, payment. Of course, if you rent, you need to pay. So how can you scale millions of transactions on a regular basis? That's the solution that Nodle Network found, is to use a blockchain and to use a token. So you're solving fragmentation by basically, and it's not perfect, but it's trying to have a virtual machine on an SDK that you can embed on applications. And it's a common denominator, so you are not able to tackle the full capabilities, but you're still able to tackle some uniqueness of smartphones. It allows you also to keep privacy, because you are only using it publicly. You don't need to know anything. You just need to know a wallet address. And you can also do a high volume of crypto payments and microtransaction as well. It's very important. Like, how can you enable microtransaction if you want to pay a few cents for capability of a smartphone? Of course, with traditional means, it is almost impossible to do. It doesn't mean that you could not build this swarm phone with other methods. It just means that the way from the Nodle team was this one. And Polkadot was the right move for Nodle. So actually, Nodle started on another blockchain. It started on Stellar, and it was not scaling enough, was not flexible enough. So the Nodle Network, the Nodle team, actually found that Substrate was a very interesting development environment. It was beautiful. It's like, how can you, it's like a blockchain as a service. You can use this, you can build your own chain. So the Nodle Network started as a solo chain. And now, finally, it's the 11th parachain, but he had these motions from another chain to a solo chain to now a parachain. The beauty of it is, of course, the shared security. Why would the Nodle Network run on Polkadot is, of course, the security, but also the cross-chain interoperability and the rich ecosystem of partners. That's one of the reasons why I'm here, is also to meet some potential partners, and how could we work together on enabling each other and to make the Polkadot ecosystem richer. The second part is about accelerating crypto adoption. Of course, I just talked about the fact that the system was making crypto payment to owners that we don't know. We think that we are still at the, let's say, at the beginning of the S-curve. If you compare with smartphone adoption, we have about 6.5 billion smartphones today. It's nuts if you think about it. But in terms of wallet, we are about 300 million. So of course we have, there may be a, like between this and there, of course there might be a chasm. So you may be familiar with the chasm. So sometimes it's very hard to, you have crypto adopters who are extremely tech savvy, but then at some point you need to transform your product to global scale, and that's actually the period we are in now. But there's a huge opportunity to democratize crypto. And many ways are being tried today. You may have heard of some project using proof of personhood. So they use biometrics to identify your person, and then you get an airdrop. There are other projects that are using phone number ownership. We didn't like all those things for several reasons. The nodal way is to reward owners of smartphone on a regular basis. So not a one-time airdrop, but a regular payment. As you rent, you get rewarded. It does not require physical presence, so you don't need to prove you are a human, which has some pros and cons, as usual. Does not require to share any personal information. It just basically requires to share the capabilities of the phone. And it's working for some users. For some users, we are doing surveys, so we analyze the customer base of, for instance, the Nodle Cash App. And for many users, it's the first time they have access to a crypto token. It's because they didn't have to do anything, right? They didn't have to pay, they didn't have to go to an exchange. They just receive as they rent the capabilities of their smartphone. And it's quite popular in some emerging markets. Now, what are they actually today rewarded for? So of course the swarmphone, we don't even know the full capabilities of what could be done there, but a few ideas is this concept of connect to earn. And that's the first use case is connecting passive things. So it's the concept of passive earning. You are familiar probably with the move to earn with Stepan, so people need to do something to get rewarded. In this case, they just need to rent the capabilities of the smartphone, so it's passive earning. But you could also connect active things, and connecting people is also a possibility of earning. In those cases, so the supply is created by the users. The users represent the supply of the service, and the demand are companies or other users that need this service. So on the first example, tracking assets to earn, the Nodle Network used Bluetooth as a way to connect previously unconnected things. So you put a Bluetooth beacon on an object, and this object will actually broadcast an idea. And as a user goes close to the object, there will be a crypto mechanism, which is a proof that you were near this object, and the user gets paid. Well, more precisely, it's not the user, it's actually the wallet that is receiving the reward. But there is also possibilities of monitoring things to earn, so it's active. It's not just looking at the fact that you are nearby an object and you're getting the location and you're able to transfer it. It's more you would interact with this object to, for instance, get data. So monitoring temperature, for instance, is a huge problem in food shipment, the temperature. So you could use the smartphones of people who are nearby to transmit and interact with those objects. And last but not least, proving connection to earn. So there's been a lot of discussion with on NFTs. It's not really an NFT in that case. It would be more like a SBT. Two people are interacting because they are close to each other through Bluetooth. Then we could create some kind of a stamp, and this is proving that you were there and you met this person. So it's a proof, call it a proof of presence. So it's very close to POAP, but slightly different still. And those are just examples of what you could do when you have this swarm of phones with this technology inside. So the final words is that the Nodle team was always obsessed with this. Initially, it started as an IoT blockchain, so really focused on Bluetooth. But once you have a programmatic environment, which is the smartphone, then it opened up new ideas, and this concept of swarmphone came to be. That is all. We are all nodes. Some of us just don't know it yet. That's the motto of Nodle. Thank you. Is there any questions? Or I know you are hungry, so we'll try to make this quick. Yes? Someone above? Could we? Can you speak louder? I have hard time. So, yeah, maybe. Yeah. We'll take it.
Okay, it works. Thanks again for the presentation. It's very fascinating.
Thanks.
I heard about Nodle for the first time, basically right now.
Okay.
And what it's worth, I'm not very, let's say, fluent in this whole NFT and crypto scene, so this is like a new thing basically for me. So the first, I guess the only question I have is that, does the current standard iteration of Bluetooth support this real-time tracking and device-to-device communication like seamlessly? And if not, then does Nodle or whoever, are there any plans like to, in case, like, I'm not sure about the dynamics of the BSIG or Bluetooth Special Interest Group like organization, whether how lobbying works in that community, or if I may rephrase it, what are the ways of Nodle to somehow propose or push certain mechanics to enable this seamless communication of devices that would basically enable this whole concept to work?
So for the first, so the question is about the status of the Bluetooth standards, also the status of the project itself. In terms of the standard, today tracking is very easy, it's already done. I mean, broadcasting idea, which is not secure, which is the problem, but broadcasting a beacon ID is actually what every Bluetooth object, or they already do that, is actually Find My iPhone, for instance, is basically developed through this means. So they do it through this means, and it's standardized. There is no issue there. Even interacting, a level of interaction is possible. The problem more today is there is no secure element on most Bluetooth beacon, so the levels of security is quite weak. And yes, we are working on creating some kind of a standard that, and we are trying to see how we can open source this and so on to create a standard so that we are a bit more secured in the way they interact. So with a smartphone would be easy because you have a lot of computing power, but those Bluetooth beacon, they don't. So and of course everything which is close to computing cryptographic things are more battery consuming, so there's another problem there. But on the first thing, if there is no much consideration in terms of encryption, those things already work. And it's been used in many different cases. The novelty with Nodle is that instead of having a very clear consumer, it's more like, yeah, you deploy this, and it's way more fluctuant. It's much broader in scope, so you have new, let's say, new applications that are possible. And in terms of the second part of your question on the status of Nodle, the first part, which is the tracking of assets, it's already part of the, basically, it's been part of from the beginning, and this already works. The connecting people things is not there implemented, so it will require some works, potentially some smart contract palettes. We don't know exactly how this would be done, and it could be done by partners, by the way. Yeah.
So if I may restate it, asset tracking is the base product which you offer, and
it's
then
a base use case, yes.
Base use case,
yeah.
Okay, let's say most widespread and fully functional, let's say, and then the people tracking and all the things connected to that. That's like a work in progress.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah, maybe. I'll give. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, so thanks for a really nice and interesting presentation. I just have one question. Like, as far as I understand it, the Nodle have been running already as a standalone chain, right? So I wanted to ask how many users were on the chain and what were some kind of like example applications that were running on top of the chain and users were participating on that.
So users is always difficult to say. We have about 500,000 wallets with non-empty, balance. But usage is, what we see is that some wallets are active, some are disappearing, some new. So the concept of users is sometimes a bit difficult to say. But we have about 500,000 wallets. And the first use case, it's already been used by a company to track assets. And again, maybe I was not clear there, but the way it's deployed is either through a Nodle app, which is the one I showed you, but also an SDK. So an SDK can be, let's say you want to track your own assets, you put the SDK inside, and you become both the supply and the demand. So from the supply side, you are getting rewarded. From the demand, you need the Nodle to consume. So it's another way to do it, and actually it's one way of one partner. They are tracking their own assets through this. So they have embedded the SDK into their own app. It's for tracking, strangely, it's for tracking cars. So it's much cheaper than using traditional means. But of course, there is always the pros and cons. It's much cheaper, but you don't have 100% coverage, right? So you have to calculate from an insurance perspective. Okay, you may not be able to track all the cars, all the stolen cars, but because it's much cheaper, somehow the calculation makes sense. Thanks. Very good question. Yes.
What was the problem with Stellar? Why you moved to Polkadot?
So it was before. It was before I arrived. I just arrived 6 months to the project. So I know they had problems in terms of. I think it was due to the volume of transaction, and Stellar tried to be a fee, like a very low fee blockchain, but actually it doesn't work. I mean, like the low fee blockchain is always like trying to do the impossible, so sometimes it's a bit funny, but I think it was really related to volume and cost, and so they had issues with the Stellar network, and it was not flexible enough. So I know there were problems with volume, but I also know that it was not programmatic, so it was not flexible. Look at the beauty of Polkadot, it's a layer 0. So if you want to become a layer 1, then you have a lot of capabilities that come with it. And now with the XCM, you can do many more things. So it's it's like night and day when you see the two technologies. But I don't want to see bad things about Stellar. I don't know the full background. It was before my time, and I didn't dig into the core problems, but I think there were those two problems, like lack of flexibility and volume. And also probably security as well was an issue. Security, I mean the capital that is actually securing the network. Yes? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like you start deploying these use cases, new incentives come at play. So what prevents, users from faking data or other people from tampering with the data that's coming into the network? I was thinking the same with the Bluetooth, like, new incentives to hack on Bluetooth. So yeah.
It's actually one of the major problems of. So it's a decentralized wireless, and one of the huge problems is actually this one: is that you have players who say, "Okay, I'm going to pretend that I am this, and to get earning." And Stepan has the similar issues today. So it's a very common problem. So right now, the way we are doing it, we are using a partner which has a technology to do a very complex obfuscation on the SDK and on the Cache App. It's pretty bad. We don't like it. It means that you cannot tamper, and if you are in some environment, like, for instance, if you are on a rooted device, the app will crash automatically so that you cannot see what is inside. It is not perfect because this problem is actually not solved. The problem of being sure that this is a genuine platform, and in this case it's a smartphone, this problem is not solved yet. So we are using these methods, which works. So it works, but it's not perfect, so maybe at some point we will open source and we'll have a solution, but today this solution is not. Is not. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you have a secure element, and then we looked at, okay, can we use some stuff on the SIMs? There are a lot of solutions, and it's a game of cat and mouse, actually. But our network, like many other networks, are being attacked on the craziest things about our place is that we constantly are being attacked by interesting people. So you have to find new solutions that you didn't even think about. Yeah. Thanks. Very good question. So we have to talk. So let's talk later. Yeah. Thanks. All right.
I just wanted to ask. So, as I'm being understood, you are not fully open source right now. Yeah.
70% is open source, but the part of the SDK and the system on the smartphone, unfortunately, is not yet open source. So we have the goal of making it open source, but we are fighting to make sure that this is not being used as a way to get rewarded for the work that so there's a kind of, you need to prove that you are connected. So proof of connection actually works, and it could work open source. But today we are in the rewarding phase, which is not just the fact that you are connected to a device that you get rewarded. It's like you have a constant reward because you want to grow your base. And this part is what can be abused. And this part is not open source yet. We have the goal, and we give ourselves 2 or 3 years to get there, but unfortunately right now we are playing with a difficult adversarial environment. Yeah.
Yeah. So regarding the open source stuff, I would like to know what are the steps like before you go, like let's say you open source some part of your code or some part of let's say some key. So what are the steps before you can go actually fully open sourced?
So either 2 steps. Either we find a solution to fully secure what's going on the SDK, That's one possibility. Other possibility is once the full set of the reward has been released, it's only between demand and supply. And between demand and supply, this can be done. There is no abuse anymore because you actually need the real device being connected, and you would get rewarded by, let's say, or I'm close to you. If I paid for being rewarded when I'm close to you, then it cannot be faked. But, well, I mean, you always have Sibyl attack and some other things, but technically, you could make sure that it's not fake. But the initial phase, this is where it's getting difficult, and we might find a solution in the meantime. So it depends the timing, what is first. Do we find a solution, or is the supply completely released to the participants? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's like Bitcoin or Ethereum. At the beginning, you have the network itself pay for its build-up. When it's built, it's only supposed to, I mean, for Bitcoin, it's only supposed to be the fees. Like you have demand, and basically the fees is what the miners get. Exactly, and the first problem is, so the first thing is how do we build? Yes, the network release token, and that's, so the network pays for its own growth. And after, it's the demand. But we already have demand. So the thing is, we already have demand for instance, tracking assets. But today, of course, it's exactly like most of the network. This part of fees is much lower than what is provided by the network. And then it grows and grows and grows. And at some point, the demand is so big, then that's the circular economy, that you have enough demand to not have to compensate with the network itself. And it's very similar. Other decentralized wireless network, they use the exact same, let's say, these exact same methods. It's very common. Thank you for all your questions. Have a good lunch.